Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Friday. Malcolm X said of the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty more innocent, and that's power. Because they control the minds of the masses. Today, the story of Sean Diddy Combs continues to dominate and will continue to do for some time, as it's expected that eventually, based on what law enforcement has done, Diddy will have to stand trial for something. And we don't know what that something is. And if you listen to the bloggers, if you listen to mainstream media and pundits, Diddy is already guilty despite not being charged with one single crime. Yet depending on which blog you read, which podcast you turn to, and with TMZ continued claims that it's breaking some news about guns and drugs, there's a belief that Diddy is a sex trafficker. We don't know that. There's a belief that he has someone smuggle pink cocaine. We don't know that. There's a belief that he's gay or bisexual. We don't know that, nor should we care. Consider this. Tory Lanez shot Megan Thee Stallion. That is a fact. He was found guilty of this crime and is serving a 10-year sentence in California. That is also a fact. But the road to this verdict and the unveiling of these facts was filled with misinformation and even misogyny from media bloggers who've cosplayed as journalists to spread harm and gossip for clicks and clout. In February of last year, media personality DJ Academics tweeted that he had breaking news. He says, it was revealed in court a few moments ago that Tory Lanez's DNA was not found on the weapon in the Meg Thee Stallion case. He tweeted, garnering 1,100 retweets and more than 4,000 likes. Megan Thee Stallion later responded to DJ Academics. She says, court ain't even started. So why y'all ready to start lying? She says, I know some of y'all blogs on payroll, but please don't get sued trying to create a hate campaign. Be a real journalist and post facts. But see, that is exactly the problem. Media influencers like academics have become the loudest voices in the Black media spaces. They are not real reporters. Yet these so-called personalities have been able to rise up when a news story breaks in the Black community because there is rarely any reliable truth written to combat the lies. And one reason that is happening is that legacy media is not prioritizing Black news and doesn't know how to properly cover the Black community. Black grassroots organizations often don't have enough money to dive deeper into an issue. It takes resources to hire reporters and dedicate a reporter or resources, the lack of resources, to something as specific as, say, the Diddy case. Media personalities arise and tweet unbeholden to rigorous journalistic standards, filling in the gaps where the truth and expertise should be. And these bloggers are so successful because, for better or worse, they understand how to communicate to Black audiences. As time goes on, unless more resources are put into authentic and Black-owned media, there will be an even more pressing need for more reliable, nuanced stories on what is happening in the Black community. Misinformation is the new norm. Black culture is the American mainstream, and we, like any other community, are owed a chance of knowing the truth. Questions abound, like how do we ensure real Black voices are heard in the midst of the noise? Despite not being charged with a crime, the invasion and ransacking of Diddy's homes by authorities raises questions about disproportionate treatment. Would such actions have been taken against a figure like Donald Trump? Would Barron Trump or Eric Trump or any other Trump been handcuffed? And what about the insidious undertones of labeling successful Black individuals as, quote, uppity when they achieve success? Rap legend Chuck D remarked this week on the coverage, noting how it seemed to hint at the audacity, quote, of this Negro. Why does the media, especially Black targeted media, seem to revel in tearing down successful Black figures when there's a hint of scandal? And why, amidst global crisis, are stories like these given precedence over matters of life and death? Who will save Black people from misinformation but the Black press? How much does the lack of resources as an ongoing debate on social media about aggregating content persists play into that in covering Diddy and others? Well, we're going to get into that. But first, a couple of quick items. A Texas appeals court tossed out a woman's 5-year prison sentence for voting illegally yesterday, ending a years-long saga that garnered national attention. Y'all remember the story of Crystal Mason, who was sentenced in 2018 to 5 years in prison after she testified she did not know that she was ineligible to vote because she was convicted of tax fraud in 2011. She cast a provisional ballot in the 2016 presidential election with the help of a poll worker. They have overturned that conviction, and they should have. It's no question that Crystal Mason should not have had to suffer this. But again, as we continue to say on this program, pay attention, pay very close attention to what has been happening. Not only do they talk about American democracy, but what has happened in America and what is going on with this whole MAGA movement. Yesterday was a good example, too. I was at the White House and got to see the president and his entire motorcade load up, was on scene. I had never actually stood there on scene and watched the motorcade load up the way it loaded up yesterday. And in fact, not only was President Biden in the motorcade, but as he got to Joint Base Andrews, Barack Obama joined him, and they got on the Air Force One and hot-tailed it to New York, where when they landed, they were greeted by none other than former President Bill Clinton. And yesterday, they had a massive fundraiser in New York at Radio City Music Hall. They raised about $25 million, which is a record for one night, thanks to some star-studded power, including Queen Latifah, who was on hand. But the biggest part came when Stephen Colbert interviewed Biden with Obama and Clinton. This is an amazing sight to see them being interviewed together. And there was great quips and exchanges and some really serious moments, like when Biden told Steve Colbert how during January 6th, again, folks, pay attention, when Biden was president-elect and Trump was still in the Oval Office, and how he was among those who implored the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president to call off the mob. But Trump called them patriots. Another moment was when Biden mentioned that after his inauguration and when he traveled overseas, the German chancellor, the French ambassador, and a British official essentially chastised the president about the January 6th incident and about America electing Trump as president, saying America was supposed to be better than this, and asked him, what would America think if a mob overran Parliament in London and killed 2 bobbies? Biden said the foreign leaders were quite serious and quite disturbed at America. Then there was this. Colbert said to Biden that there have been a lot of jokes about your age. And he says, I've done a lot of them, and they've been very successful. He says, thank you. But he says to Biden, what would you like to say to people who think that you're too seasoned for the job? And this was President Biden's response, one that everyone should pay close attention to and remember. He says, well, I don't know about seasoned, but I hope they're not too old of ideas. And here is the point of points. He said, you know, this last guy that I ran against, Trump, and am running against again this time, of course, Trump, his ideas, and here's underline this, folks. Highlight this, put a highlighter on it, because we've been talking about it on this show forever. He says Trump's ideas are from the 18th and 19th century. Some people laugh when he said that, and Biden interjected. He says, no, I'm serious. This is the way he talks about when he says he's going to suspend the Constitution, when he says he's going to be a dictator. But look, he says, I think that there is, if you pay attention and you've been around a while, no matter what your background is, if you pay attention, one thing age does bring is a little bit of wisdom. So for all of these Black targeted folks who keep talking about, oh, well, Biden is too old, or Biden did the crime bill. It's easy to overlook. Go back and look, not just at Biden's response to Colbert last night, but the things that Barack Obama and Bill Clinton highlighted in their responses. Very important stuff. I thought is for a fundraiser. You know, they began the question and answer with some jokes and things of that nature, but then got serious, and Biden, Clinton, and Obama were very pointed. And particularly Biden highlighting the first and only Black president in the history of the U.S., highlighting how Biden has done more for Black America than even he did. Acknowledging that. You got to check it out. And then for those who say things like, well, I'm a Republican, or my family is Republican, or we've been Republican and we have to stick by our party. Biden said this. He says, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different breed of cat. This is the about 30 to 40% of the MAGA Republicans. And I don't know what it is that my predecessor has on these guys. Haven't you asked that question? What does Trump have on Ted Cruz? What does he have on Marco Rubio? What does he have on Tim Scott? What does he have on such and such? We've all asked that question. Biden said it out loud. Pay attention, folks. We are, again, on Let It Be Known, we do not endorse a candidate. We won't endorse a candidate, but we will continue to lay out the facts for you. One last note before we get to our special guest this morning. Good Times is coming back on Netflix as a cartoon. They dropped the official trailer for an animated reboot of the beloved sitcom. The series comes via Act 3 Productions, the company of TV show icon Norman Lear, who developed the original Maude spinoff in the 70s, along with Steph Curry, Seth MacFarlane, and others. The brand new show contends the following. It says the latest generation of the Evans family, cab driver Reggie and his wife, the ever aspirational Beverly, scratching and surviving in one of the last remaining housing projects in Chicago, along with their teenage artist son, Junior, activist daughter, Gray, and drug dealing infant son, Dalvin. Now, we know good and well the Evans family that we knew and loved did not in any way condone drug dealing. But it goes on. The series boasts an all-star cast: J.B. Smoove, Yvette Nicole Brown, Jay Farrow, Marci Martin. I mean, Rashida Sheeds, she's playing in it as well. I mean, so many. Renata Shepard is the executive producer and showrunner. But the show's trailer teases a considerably raunchier Good Times than the original, feeling less animated sitcom and more adult cartoon comedy, complete with above 18 jokes and content. It's R-rated, and it wastes no time letting audience dive into the world and tone of the reboot. So my thoughts quickly on that as we move. You know, they rebooted, and I never watched the reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but I'm consistently told how good it is and that how they did it right. So I don't know. That's what I heard. But this, and I've seen social media go absolutely nuts on this. They're just not into this version of Good Times. So with that, we'll move into our special guest this morning, Josh Barker of the Amsterdam News, the famous Amsterdam News, and Kathia Woods, the Philadelphia Tribune. Good morning. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
So, guys, we saw what's going on with Diddy, and one of the things I appreciate about Chuck D is how he just seems to put things in perspective, and he highlighted the disproportionate focus on figures like Diddy over more pressing global issues. So the question becomes, how can we shift the narrative to prioritize stories that truly matter? Because misinformation in is the new norm, right? And Black culture is the target. Yeah, so let's talk about it. Josh,
Mm-hmm.
You're in New York. There's more to the Diddy story, but only talk about how Black journalists can flesh that story out. Because, we have to, Roland Martin argued, really keep an eye on this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Amsterdam News doing in particular? What are your plans, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was talking with my executive editor yesterday, and we have, there's so many things happening in New York City at any given moment. There's dozens of stories happening just within the last 10 minutes that you've been on talking. And so who's going to cover those stories? There's only so many journalists and so many people that can cover those stories, not to mention how many of those stories are actually impacting the Black community. However, the Diddy story impacts us because of the reach that it has to our community. This is an icon to the Black community. When people think of Black culture, they oftentimes think of folks like Diddy. And one of the things that I have been discussing with the staff is that, this story goes far beyond the tabloids. It goes far beyond the sensationalism that we're seeing in mainstream media. Diddy had charities. Diddy had a charter school in Harlem that he helped founded that severed ties with him in November. Who's talking about that? Diddy gave about $1 million to $2 million to Jackson State University, an historically Black college. What's going on with that? Was there something named after him with that? So when things like this happen, there are so many angles that reach to a point where things have to be questioned and coverage has to be questioned and priorities have to be questioned. Who gets better coverage? Does Diddy's situation get more coverage because it gets more clicks, or does the ongoing poverty and homelessness in New York City get coverage because it's actually a humane issue that needs to be covered? So those are decisions that have to be made, and it takes Black journalists to understand how to cover these stories in a way that is thorough and just and fair to our community.
Yeah, and Katia, we saw already in the Diddy story, there was, it's been a lot of conjecture, a lot of people opining, jumping out of the woodwork, the blogs, the podcasts, and we're not here in any way to litigate Diddy's situation. But what we are talking about is the responsibility of the Black media, Black-owned media in particular. How do we navigate this, Katia?
By telling the truth. We have a responsibility. There's a couple of things going on, right? We have those of us that have covered hip hop culture and covered Diddy for many, many years. There's been tremendous amount of talk about this alleged behavior, right? About his business recruitment, which hasn't always been on the most honorable and beneficial to Black people. There are court cases. You can look at the locks, that infamous call into, Angie Martinez, where they're asking for their masters and songwriting credits, and the list goes on and on. We have a responsibility to tell the truth on our icons. Even, we have to tell the truth about Bill Cosby, and Bill Cosby has done way more than Diddy for Black people and Black education, and the list goes on and on. And this is important because, again, if we don't hold ourselves accountable, who will, right? Mm-hmm. And again, that means that you stick with the facts. You work, you do that good journalism. You pick up the phone. You call his lawyer to find out what their stance is. You look over the court documents. If this looks like if it does go to trial, it's going to be out of New York. So you work with people in New York. If you can't physically have, then you make sure you hire a journalist that is based in New York that has a resume, and also make sure that they have access to sit in court should this go to court, so they can get firsthand, hear everything, so we can report accordingly. And that's most importantly, because the truth at the end matters over clicks and noises and everything. And also, we have to be more discerning, right? We all like to listen to the tea, and it's fun. It's kiki at the barbershop and at the beauty salon. But it's like I tell people, you don't go to your auto mechanic, to get your teeth pulled, or vice versa. So it's the same kind of thing. Is you don't go to the place where you get your tea from, where you get your gossip from, to find out who's dating who, to find out what's going on in the Middle East. It's the same thing with this. We just have to be, we're better than this, and we're choosing not to be.
Yeah, and all the things, Josh, that Kathia just said, obviously, it's factual, it's true. Mm-hmm. But what about having that ability? I mean, the Amsterdam News, of course, is one of the few who has really a staff to really speak of, right? Mm-hmm. Having the resources is really the issue. So what all she said is true, but how do we counterbalance all of that, or not counterbalance, but counteract the blogs who have, these guys, we're talking about academics and others who have great followings. How do we get our message through all that noise?
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact of the matter is the Black press has always struggled with two things, funding, well, three things: funding, staffing, and a lack of access. For many years here at the Amsterdam News, we struggled with funding in terms of hiring staff, how we were able to find it, and be able to hire more people to do more things for us. But one of the things I also point out to the staff quite a bit and to our leadership is partnerships. A lot of people that call themselves journalists, and I'm using air quotes here, those bloggers, those Facebookers, those TikTokers who consider themselves journalists just by saying something or following someone because they have a relationship, is concerning a lot of times, because a lot of folks don't know what news is and what's not. I always make a joke with my staff and my writers. I say it's so easy to make fake news nowadays. I'm a digital editor, so I know what it means to design something to make it look like it's real, even though it's not. And so what it takes is partnering with those correct people to be able to let them know, hey, we notice you have a following. We've been doing this for a very long time, and we think we might be able to even expand your reach a little even further, and you can help us expand ours. But knowing who's for real and who's serious is also key as well. And knowing who's, who wants to partner with you, who can give you something sustainable and real, as opposed to someone who's just going to give you clicks, is always something that needs to be considered. So it's just very important that you always know who you're working with.
Yeah, and isn't that it too, Kathia? It's for today. It's about clicks. Again, this debate, and Roland Martin kind of took part in it. Well, was the center of it when he was talking about aggregating content and things of that nature. And the observations that he continues to make there. But someone mentioned it's all about clicks, and if it was about anything other than clicks, if it was about real journalism, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because there was a time where it was only real journalists, or journalism, I should say, trying to satisfy your publisher or your publication with clicks, and then doing accurate information sometimes seems to they seem to counteract each other.
Well, Roland is right and wrong at the same time, right? Because as sad as it is, we are in this space right now where we're all fighting for advertising dollars, and especially in Black media. So the headlines are the means to get you to click, and God willing, when you click on the article, then you get the news, right? It's like the tease. Think about it as dating. Someone flashes to you a little body part, and then you wanna see if you're gonna get more, and then the person goes, "Oh, this is what it is," right? So it's a horrible practice. I don't like it, but this is where we are, right? And to me, it's like, I think it's a couple of tiers, right? We have some people that are older, and I'm older, that are not very much, they don't know how to adjust to this modern news cycle, and they're not willing to adjust. That doesn't mean that we're not, that we start doing stuff that academics does. Dear God, no. But at the same token, we took too long as a community to get into the digital space. We got to own that, and we got to take responsibility for that. And a lot of people that are coming from the old school way of doing media or news in this particular case are unwilling to adapt. And it's hurting us tremendously. How we go after advertising dollars, how we do sales. We still are depending on the same bucket for funding, which is tremendously harmful, right? Or the fact that we're not understanding that you can't pay a top journalist or good journalist in New York $40K and expect them to do 6 jobs. This idea of, you're so lucky to be working in this media space and then be like, okay, we're going to pay you $40K, but you got to be your own photographer. You got to be your own editor. We want you to turn around, work quickly. We want you to be first on the news. And $40K in New York is not going to butt it, even if you live with 4 roommates in Brooklyn. Like, it's not going to, the math is not mathing. So we got to figure out how to do it. In this particular case, I would love to see Black media work together, right? And also stop pulling from AP, like pull from each other. Like, if the relationship is in New York right now, right? You have the Amsterdam News in New York. Let's work together with other parts of the country that maybe cannot send a journalist to help fund and get that journalist in New York everything that they need, and then pull from them. Because this way we keep it within the family. Why are we feeding the AP when the AP is good? The AP doesn't need our money, doesn't need our port. We need the money within each other. That's something I never understood. When we pull, why are we pulling from white journalists? We don't even pull from a Black journalist that's working at the AP. We pull from white journalists that are speaking on the culture, which is very disturbing.
Yeah, and Josh, the other thing centering around the whole matter with Diddy, we saw even yesterday, the Daily Mail ran a story. I think it was the Daily Mail that ran a story simply on a tweet or an Instagram post that Mary J. Blige had put out. And Mary simply mentioned in the tweet, mentioned no names, no hashtags, that, it used to be, she was at a place where people could do essentially anything they wanted to her. Now she's in a different place. And immediately the story became she's taking a dig at Diddy. Do we know that? And we see other folks tweeting and making posts on their social media, not necessarily naming Diddy, but mainstream and bloggers and others are going after these things, and they are reporting them, and it's like breaking news. How, again, where's our responsibility as a Black person? How do we navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm old enough to remember a time when if a celebrity wanted to say something, they had to call their publicist, put something out there, get something to you, or call you, and you would get it eventually. But nowadays with Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, celebrities can pretty much control the narrative now. And of course, you have people who are literally watching social media accounts on a 24-hour basis and waiting for that moment when Beyonce says something or when Mary J. Blige says something, so they can be the first to report on it. When we were talking off the air about what does that mean if you're sitting in front of a computer and covering celebrity news based on tweets and what they're putting out there on their accounts. But you have to understand that social media has changed the way that celebrities communicate with the public. They're now able to at any moment, on their phones or on their whatever devices, they can put out what they want to. Whether or not it's true or not becomes a question, and unfortunately the way that most of these sites and accounts operate is that if someone famous says it, it has to be true, because if they're saying it, there's no question about it, when a lot of times it's been proven that information like that has been false. And I'm not particularly targeting Mary J. Blige's situation, just saying in general, that happens quite often.
Yeah, and again, staying along those same lines, Kathia. We're seeing even like 50 Cent. He has a large following, right? And one of the individuals that is somehow entangled, not from law enforcement's eyes, but from the greater community's eyes, somehow entangled in all this is 50 Cent's baby's mother, right? And he's tweeting out things with the words sex worker and things of that nature. Of course, she's denying that. And that's become a story. TMC did a big story on that. I want to pose the same thing to you that I posed to Josh. Where do we, how do our stories about this situation, how do we get those to take more precedent or be more highlighted than those things that really don't matter and only serve to tear the culture down?
Well, number one, we don't compete with TMZ. We don't compete with academics. That's number one thing. We gotta, again, goes back to, we should never be quoting TMZ on anything because they violate the number one rule of journalism. They pay for information, right? We do not pay for information. If you look at all the big investigative stories, you gain people's trust by being a good journalist, by your resume, by the work that you've done, right? The outlet that you work for. TMZ is notorious of having people stationed out at various different places trying to catch celebrities in the act, paying maids and whatever else you have there. So within that comes a problem. The moment you exchange money with someone, what is the motivation? Did it actually happen? Right? What is it we say in our business? We're supposed to have 2 or 3 confirmations at times like this. You rather go 5? Okay, I spoke to 5 different people. They're all saying the same thing. Okay, now we got something here, right? These 5 people aren't related. They're not, there's no money exchange. So now we have, something to go with. We got to get back to academics is going to do academics. Let them do them, right? We're not here to compete. We're supposed to be the alternative. And the way that we do it is, again, we got to do a better job of having digital presence. By that, I don't mean by having crazy headlines like Black Enterprise had the other day, right? Which is astounding, when you think of Black Enterprise, and just getting back out there to telling the truth. Hey, pick up the phone. It's like Josh said, wonderful she posted it, but you don't know, did she post it? Did her team post it? Because a lot of celebrities have people who post things for them. It takes 2 seconds to call up her team and be like, hey, I'm Kathia Woods from the Philadelphia Tribune. I saw Mary's post. Just want to make sure, is she making a reference in terms of people asking her, period, what's going on? Or is this towards Diddy? Or is she just saying, you know what, leave me alone. I'm minding my business and living my best life. So it takes 2 seconds to get it cleared up. And then you put that in the story. We contacted, they said no comment. And now we've got the direct source. You still got to do the work no matter what is going on in social media. That's what the bloggers do. They pull it from social media and they put it out there and say, this is how Mary feels. Same thing with, I don't know if you guys saw it, but remember a couple while back when Justin Combs was, pulled over for drunk driving,
right.
His mother posted a barrage of things on her Instagram. And then she put it down. You pick up the phone and say, Misha, hey, was this in reference to some of this stuff going on when you had that day where you let it, loose? And again, she either comments or she chooses not to comment. But again, pick up the phone and ask people. They have teams and that is not new. And then you can say, okay, we spoke to the people, but we should, again, never be sourcing TMZ, and dear God, definitely not academics.
Well, joining us also is the hip hop historian and journalist, Courtney Brown. Courtney, thanks for joining Let It Be Known, the Black Press of America's daily digital show. We appreciate you. Courtney, good morning. We, we know too, as our great producer, director, manager Greer points out, that even Diddy himself has shared prior to this anyway, some very questionable things on his own social media. Mm-hmm. Does he own some of the so-called misinformation? I mean, some wild moments he shared with Cassie, for instance, some moments with his sons in uncontrolled situations with his sons and women. Does Diddy should he own some of this, as she put it, so-called misinformation?
I think he does own a lot of the misinformation because he has set this narrative over the years. Like, as a journalist, I could tell you that despite what he does, what has been the most popular in the past 20 years is, can you get into a Diddy party, you know? So, you know, a lot of people are missing the fact that this has been a big part of the culture. A lot of people wanted to experience these parties. A lot of people wanted to have fun, quote unquote, you know? So now we're being challenged on our morals and the things that we thought were so good and so fun. And that's why R. Kelly mentioned it's not just me. A lot of people are going to go down with this. And, you know, while I'm sure he does own a lot of that information, there's so much things that we don't know about. People have hinted about it. People have talked about it, you know, and growing up in the 90s and in the early 2000s, you know, I experienced a lot of these parties and I realized most people just wanted to be down. It's a lot of clout chasers, people that are older, people that are, especially people in the industry. I mean, I've worked at record labels. I've worked at several places for years. And even at the Source magazine, we shared an office with Daddy's House. So he did a lot of good things for the Source. So when you have someone like that, people are going to curb their true thoughts and feelings about a person. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what happens. And even with us, I was leery about covering this at all because I'm like, oh man, it's, you know, it's Diddy, it's wrong, it's awful. Of course, as a woman, I feel terrible about it. But we're all like, wow, we have to step on this man that once helped us, gave us our, you know, helped with our holiday parties, contributed with liquor. So everyone is looking at these instances, and a lot of people don't want to go against Diddy.
Yeah, Josh, one of the things that Mike V, one of our viewers, fantastic viewers, says we also have to be careful that AI has impacted social media with deep fakes and other propaganda that is targeted at Black folks. That has to play into this somehow too, right, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, AI and recent developments in technology have created a lot of problems. You know, there's so many things. I scroll on my social media and I see pictures and I know that they're AI because I work in digital, so I'm able to identify them. So I refuse to comment, share, or anything. You know, as a journalist, we have to be very careful about how we handle ourselves on social media. Even by a like, it can discredit you by liking something. You know, I oftentimes, if I have a friend that puts something that's AI, I automatically can see it, and I just say in there, "This is fake," because I'm well enough to know and want to stop the disinformation. And I hate to put my friends on blast, but I just feel responsible to let them know and educate them. Hey, you're sharing this, and not only is it wrong, but it's making you look bad and discrediting you as a person, no matter what industry you're in, whether it's education, journalism, or whatever. But unfortunately, what AI has done, it's been able to, it allows us to manipulate reality. You know, we weren't able to do that 5 years ago, and now we are able to do it. And now with advancements with AI and video, you know, I saw a video today of a guy, a famous Instagram person or TikToker, and he had Vladimir Putin showing him a brand new car, and it was obviously fake because he doesn't know the guy. It looked so real. It looked 100% real. So we have to be very careful and conscious and kind of call out. I mean, if you want to call it AI or your friends, that's cool. If not, it's fine. I just think we have a responsibility as journalists not to really feed into it because it discredits us when we cheer it on. It's definitely a risk.
Yeah, and Kathia and Courtney, Josh, you all weigh in on this too, if you choose. One of the things, Power 96, he's posting as the Orange G Swag Sports. We know him as Power 96. He says Dr. Dre needs to be held accountable. Now, the reason I brought that comment up is we see. I think, Kathia, we've had this conversation before too about Dr. Dre, but this idea that with Diddy and others, you mentioned Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, others, this idea that the folks around and the greater community knew about these alleged crimes. And that's the other thing, the word alleged, we must use that word, number one, folks. We have to use that. Otherwise, as Josh says, we have absolutely no credibility because nothing, in Diddy's case especially, he hasn't even been charged with a crime. But we keep saying and we keep hearing We knew about this person. We definitely knew. Everyone knows about the situation with Dr. Dre. Yet, the Black press, along with others, we boost these guys up. We praise them. I mean, something needs to change, right?
I mean, I would like to say correction on Dre. A lot of Black women, especially Black women that cover the culture, have been called him to the carpet. The problem is the men in position of authorities keep protecting him. The fact
Courtney agrees.
the fact they named an award after this man, it's basically saying you can get away with beating out women and voila, and say you're sorry in the name of dollars, and we're going to give you an award. It's a horrible thing. Like I've interviewed Dee especially, and have written articles about it, and said the culture owes her an apology. They stopped her money to the point the girl was almost homeless. Do you know what I mean? And she still is getting trolled out about by people online viciously. So we got to do better. And in getting back to how do we cover this. Listen, I went to Temple University. Bill Cosby spoke at my graduation. My husband at my graduation. My sister went to Temple. He spoke at hers. My daughter's currently at Temple. The Cosby Show.
He won't speak at that one.
Well, he won't. But I'm saying, the Cosby Show was the first time I felt like my family as a Black family was depicted. Because again, not all Black people grew up in the projects. Nothing wrong with that. Right. But I was like, wow, finally we're getting a different depiction, and what he had done so much for the culture. But you know what? Right is right and wrong is wrong. And as much as it's heartbreaking, we got to tell the truth, because it is about the victims, right? And if this is really true, and also we got to think about it this way. I like to use common sense and knowledge. This is a very high profile thing. Let's think about, in order for you to get a warrant, in order to raid someone, you can't just say, I don't like someone, right? You have to come with some facts. You got to come with situations. You got to come, especially on a federal level, that's a lot of taxpayer money in an election year. So there's gotta be something there. And I'd rather them take their time before, if charges are going to be pressed, go through everything and then make sure that he is getting his due process. But we got to be better. We're not very good as a culture. And I tell you, if it wasn't Black women, and it breaks my heart to say this, that were primarily the victims, this wouldn't, all these men that we've known about that are challenging all these years would have been taken care of. We know this with R. Kelly. So part of this is we don't believe Black women. We don't protect Black women. And we definitely, in the culture, have misogyny, and the list goes on and on. And as much as I love hip hop, and hip hop has done for me, we got to do better. That's just point blank, period.
Courtney, I know you're dying to weigh in. You go, girl.
Well, I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because you opened up a really large Pandora's box. Because can I just take it back for one quick second? Because I call myself a hip hop historian for a reason. So, I started at Raucous Records, and I toured for 7 years with artists. So initially I was the only female on a tour bus with mostly men for several artists. So I'm not calling anyone out. But what I will tell you is some of the things that I viewed and I endured on hip hop tours really shocked me, especially as a young girl. I started touring at 21 years old. So when you're a young Black 21-year-old girl, there's certain things that happen that sometimes you're ashamed of admitting. And that's where it starts. It starts with the shame. Because one thing I noticed that we're not protected like other people are. When I say other people, like if something happens to a Black girl and she's announcing, like the girl said, Diddy shot me. She said it. He shot me, not John. People kind of ignored her. She said it to the judge. She said it to the court. She said these things, So
she's still, Courtney, she's still getting smoked today because some people believe that she's just now saying it.
Yes. Just like some people will say, well, why are you saying it now? Well, the reason sometimes people hold things in is because you know that people aren't going to believe you. You're going to be ashamed. And now your social media comments are flooded with people that are angry at you for attacking their favorite celebrity. So in 2012, I wrote a story for The Source magazine called Rape in Hip Hop. right?
Mm.
I would say that was my biggest story because it got the most traction. People interviewed me a lot about that. And the reason that was my biggest story was because I interviewed the girl that accused Tupac of raping her. I was the first person to find her before Vlad. I found she moved back into the city. And when I wrote that story, the reason I wrote it was because a girl I know told me a story about a famous rapper that had raped her. Beautiful brown skinned black girl. Now, I say alleged because, of course, I can't say if it's true or not.
Right,
The
right.
story was so detailed, I decided to put that story in the article. When I tell you I got so much hate mail from Tupac fans, from people who they thought I was talking about. It was insane because I never felt that much hate before. And when
Mm.
you feel that much hate, it could depress you. It didn't depress me because as a writer, I like when I make you feel something. So I cheered. But for other people, that could really bring you down. So what would make a woman tell certain things that she's endured if you're just going to be attacked? So the story goes way deeper than that. There's so many more. Just from me working in the industry, I've appeared on several albums from the 90s. I was on DMX's first album. I was around the Rough Riders. I'm seeing so many things. And just for the record, I was 17 years old on DMX's first record. Some might say, why were you 17 years old in the studio? But people don't ask these questions when you're a black girl. They don't question certain things. So I say all that to say that our problem is deeper in the black community because I live in Harlem. When I was 11 years old, men started talking to me. When I was 12 years old, men started offering me money. And if you don't have a certain structure in your house and people see that you don't have a man to defend you and take up for you, sometimes they take advantage. So that's why I said this story gets a lot deeper, and I feel like it's something that we should discuss as a community.
And you see the thing there, the banner. How do we shift to narratives that matter? That's a narrative that definitely matters because you say 2012, Josh. You put that article out. That was really pretty much pre Me Too, and so there we have. A situation where she had to have been bold and brave and have a conviction to do something like this. Josh, how do we as male black journalists, how do we step up? Because as these great young female journalists have brought out, the black women are mostly the victims. So where's our role, Josh?
Yeah, definitely. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. And, one of my main concerns always since I've been doing this is how young people perceive what they see in the media, especially on social media. And unfortunately, our young girls are watching this. Our young boys are watching this whole situation with Diddy unfold. They're seeing negative messages on what it means to have to do certain things, on what it means to be a man or a woman. And so what our responsibility as male journalists, black male journalists, is to put out positive messages, positive images of the black male, because we're living the experience of what it means to be a black man here in this country. One of the great things about the black press is that we control in our news outlets what we produce. We're able to put positive images of black men out there, positive images of black women, positive images of families. The Cosby Show ended more than 30 years ago. I'll be honest with you. I think I was I was so young back then. I remember when the show ended. But have we seen another show like that since? And the answer is no. So what is our job as black journalists, male or female, in that space? And one of the things I always tell my interns, I get a lot of interns that come to me every year, college students. I tell them two things. I say, number one, this might be the only time in your whole career where you're working with people that look just like you. Mm-hmm. Number two, when you go to that next job where you might be the only one, you have a responsibility as an African American to make sure that certain things don't pass. And while you might be at that low level, you still have a responsibility to at least speak up on certain things. And that's what has to happen, is that we have to have more diversity in our newsrooms, in our mainstream newsrooms, and that make sure that we're producing journalists that know what to do and what time and when to do it.
And Kathia, what Josh just said, he's absolutely correct, but is it easier said than done in today's climate?
It's a tough battle, when you, sadly, in many cases, sometimes, especially in entertainment journalism, when you're the lone one, right? And you have to explain to a white editor why it's not appropriate to say things in a certain way. You know what I mean? and they have autonomy over you. They have autonomy what kind of stories you get to tell, right? And are you going to move up? And the list goes on and on. I mean, it's little things like, you've been on the carpet and people confusing Black people, and they're standing right next to each other, and you have a tip sheet and you're like, we don't all look alike, friend. You know what I mean? Or just overall being like, well, I can say certain things because my partner is Black, and you're just like, you're like, nah.
I have Black friends.
You know what I mean? And it's small things to bigger things, but the fight is important, because at the end of the day, it's not we're not national spokespeople for Black people, right? Mm-hmm. We're not a monolith. We're global people, as I like to say. But you're the one people look at because people go, well, don't you work over there? Well, aren't you letting them do that? You know what I mean? When you go into Black spaces. So I do feel like you have a responsibility to, especially when it's your name above the byline. Mm-hmm. I fight for my byline and for my content like nobody's business. So I'm like, if you're going to go with something foolish, you're not attaching my name to it. You're going to attach your name to it. That's one thing I always insist on. But I do think we have a responsibility to speak up. It's very, like, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it's been very telling who has been willing to tackle the story and who has pretended like it doesn't even exist. And I hate to say it, a lot of it is coming from our spaces because we're more concerned about access and exactly what she said, which is getting that invite to the party. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on with you? Like, where is your integrity,
But I like to just challenge one thing that you said, Josh, because this happens a lot when I start speaking up with the things that Black women deal with. Mm-hmm. So they always say like, okay, more positive Black men role models. We got to push Black men to make them look more positive. But what about the things they do that aren't positive that ends up hurting us to our detriment and ruining our lives forever? Mm-hmm. So what happens is when I said I stepped away from touring, I was so traumatized by the things that I saw that I changed fields. That's how traumatized I was. Mm-hmm. I went from tour managing to now I'm a radio host, so I could talk about all this crazy shit I've seen. And the reason I did that was because I didn't want to talk about what I saw, because I felt like the men weren't held accountable. These are wonderful men, right? They sell records, right? Aren't they great? They make everything go up, right? But who's going to protect us? Who's going to say, well, when you have a girl working for you, you shouldn't be trying to have sex with her if you're paying her. You shouldn't get her in a hotel room and make her uncomfortable. When are we going to have those discussions? There's so many alleged things that people talk about that are like rumors in the hip hop industry. Oh, did he have her first? And then they broke up over a woman. But when are we going to talk about respecting these women in these work field, not having sex with women you work with? I'm going to Disney Dreamers Academy next week.
I'll be there with you. I'll be there. I leave Saturday.
Got you. When I talk to these girls, I keep it so real with them. That's why I always have a group around me, because I know what you want. I know what you want to do and where you want to work. Let me tell you first things first. Don't ever sleep with your boss and somebody that is paying you, and you can't learn this stuff anywhere else.
That's very true. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you because I know these things. We need to keep it real with each other. Black men need to tell other Black men, yeah, she's fine, but don't cross that line because you don't know how it will come back up. And that's what I would like to see. I would like to see our Black journalists hold our men accountable. We want you guys. We love you guys. We don't want to be traumatized. So we need to see how we can also add to that and help and encourage our Black men and our Black women do better.
Absolutely.
It's also boundaries. It's boundaries like this. As Black women, we working in this, we can't put our cell phone number on our business card because people don't know business hours or how to contact you. People think they can jump into your DMs and say things, or it's even little things like hands on you. Why are your hands on me?
Listen.
Your hands to be on me. Like I'm a big, that's a serious no for me.
Yeah, no.
Unless you and I have a different type of relationship, don't put your hands on me. Don't be condescending and call me sweetheart in order to try to make it seem like I'm being sensitive, I'll let you know in a minute. You can call me Ms. Woods or you can call me Mrs. Woods. So you understand that we are here to do business. No, I'm not coming to your room. You can come down here to this hotel room, to this bar, to this restaurant where I said we're going to meet to do this interview, where there's buku people. I'm not going upstairs to your room where it's you and 15 of your boys. Do I look like somebody cool?
Yeah.
And it's just, why do we have to meet at 11 o'clock at night? Like, what are we doing? You know?
And no, I don't need a massage.
No, exactly.
Is that one of the things, Courtney?
One of the things.
Or people do things. It's like the little brush on your back, right? Why are you doing that? Who taught you that is okay? And it's always like we're being hysterical, we're being sensitive, we're doing too much. No, I'm letting you know my boundaries, my guy. It's not up for negotiation. And I don't need to coin that badly. Listen, I'll scrub floors and toilets. Nothing wrong with any of that before I'll go anywhere with you. I'm good on that. That's really how I feel about it. And I wish, like what she said also, is more other men, good men, need to be like, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are your hands on her? Like, you're doing too much. Like, you need to calm down. You know what I mean? We need more of that, you know, especially in these spaces where everybody, and the other thing too is, I say, young girls, when you go to these parties, it's open bar, right? And very rarely does the food amount match the drink amount. I don't understand why.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's open bar and it's tequila shots and we kiki and everything like that. I'm like, treat this like the work Christmas party. For every sip of alcohol that you have 18 sips of water. Or at some point, be like, oh, I'm only going to have 2 glasses of wine and the rest is going to be water. Put the little lime in there, get your little straw. You can still be cute, but be fully alert. You know what I mean? Don't be in there thinking it's a good time, because people don't have the same values, sadly.
Yeah, no.
Don't respect boundaries.
Yeah. I just want to chime in and say that I totally agree with Courtney. You know, as men, we have to hold ourselves accountable. One of the things about the Black press that we pride ourselves on at the Amsterdam News is, while we celebrate our people on a regular basis, we also call them out as well. You know, one of the responsibilities, people think the responsibility of the Black press is, oh, we just kind of say and agree with whatever Black people do, and that's not the case. I mean, the mayor of New York City is an African American, and if he's doing something bad, we're going to call it out, regardless of who he is. You know, yeah, he's the second Black mayor of New York City, but at the same time, we as a Black news outlet have to hold them accountable. So I totally agree with Courtney. We as men have to shift the narrative to other men to let them know that certain things are not okay. I totally agree with that.
And I know it's not you, Josh, because I can tell that you are a kind gentleman and an upstanding right? So we know it's not you, but we need men like you that are upstanding, kind gentlemen to, I mean, I guess, and it's not really defending us, but people don't want to say something to someone with power. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's it also, absolutely.
When someone is paying the check, like a lot of places, like just to uncover, you know, some of the few things that happens when you're on tour, it goes from, oh, it was a long day. Can you give me a massage? It starts with that. No. The next things where they cross the boundaries are when you guys are out shopping. Hey, you want to get something? Now, when you're young and your boss is saying you want to get something, automatically your mind says yes. What I teach these girls is no. It's going to cost you more than that little bag.
Exactly.
You know, but when you're young and you haven't had Chanel and Gucci and Louis Vuitton, men will play off of that. And this is what happens sometimes. Sometimes you want to show up. You feel good when you have on the new Chanel blazer and all the girls want to be you. And you're like, look at my new blazer. And that messes up with the psyche of a young girl who's trying to get far in a business, but she also likes stuff. Maybe her boss is handsome. These are important conversations that we need to discuss. I remember Cassie came to our holiday party during the time we were in Daddy's house. And it was interesting because she had dark glasses on, she had a hood on, and this was daytime. She was completely covered up. And she ate up all the food that we made. Like, she was so hungry. And I remember how that stood out to me. I remember her fingers being covered with diamonds, but it was something that looked sad about her. And I recognized it because I felt that way before.
And you saw this?
Yeah, I saw her sadness. I saw something was wrong. And it's only because I recognize it because I've been through it. Not necessarily that, but I know when your spirit is broken. when your
Yeah.
spirit is broken, you know? So because of that, that's why every article that I write, similar to how you were saying, Josh, not only do I try to include myself in articles about Black women, I have uncovered some of my mishaps, my mistakes, in order to teach people who read my articles. You know, like there was a young girl who got stabbed. No, she got shot by the police because she pulled out a knife. And you know, in Harlem, it used to be wild. They told us, blades in your ponytail. These were things that we learned. We could have got murdered for some of the things that we were taught. So I put myself in the story, and I put photos of myself when I was younger and wild in the streets, right? And then I showed where I was now, how far I've came, and how my community helped me come that far. I didn't have my mother or father. I had people that God sent to me and said, you don't have a mom, but you have this white woman who's going to come along and help you. The last person I expected. My mom was the Black Panther, so I'm super pro-Black. I was on the cover of the Amsterdam News back in 1991. You know why?
I gotta track that down.
1991. You know why? Because my mother made us join a group and march to the United Nations and charge them with genocide. That's how I grew up. Absolutely. And they maced me, and I was an 11-year-old girl. The cops maced us, and you know, it made the cover of the Amsterdam News. You know, so when I worked at Starbucks, and this white journalist walked in and says to me, "Oh, I'm so tired," and I was like, "Oh, your hat is so beautiful." The next day, she comes in. I tell her I'm tired. She goes, "Well, why are you tired?" I said, "I'm a journalist in school." She goes, "Oh, I'm a journalist. I just wrote the cover of Rolling Stone." So I ran to the news stand to see who's on the cover, and it was Will Smith. So when she came back the next day, I said, "Oh my God, you interviewed Will Smith, and he mentioned Biggie to you." I said, "Do you know who Biggie is?" She was like, "No, here's my number. Come to my house. I'll show you my reel." The next day I went to her house, and I was amazed that I met Nancy Collins. She's like a super famous journalist. She did the Demi Moore cover for Vanity Fair. So many amazing covers. After I spoke to her that night and told her about my life, she said, "How much does Starbucks pay you?" I said, $10 an hour. She said, "I'll pay you 20. Come work for me." And the way she changed my life, I can never explain to you. Someone who was placed in my life to bless me when I didn't have blessings, when I was on the street wilding. And I ended up going to college and really becoming who I was because of the people that helped me. So I say all this to say, as a community, we have to step up. When we see a sadness in a young girl's eyes, it doesn't matter how busy we are. We have to stop and acknowledge that. You know, I grew up a little dark-skinned girl. We know how we were all treated growing up, raised by my grandma. So I already had it hard. Every little Black girl I see, I touch, and I let them know how beautiful they are, smart and intelligent. And women that have grown up have mentioned how much that have helped them, you know? So I know I went on this long thing.
No,
you're fine.
It's important, though. It's important though, because you know, I have a 22-year-old daughter, and I think about you shouldn't have to have a child, but it hits a little different when it comes out of your womb and you nourished it and you poured love into it. And I tell my daughter all the time, like, I will never get upset. You call your father or I in the middle of the night and you say, "Hey, the situation isn't right." I might be in my pajamas, but we coming, you know what I mean? It's and who we gotta go see about causing problems. And I'm a firm believer too. Like, you'll be in events and you see a young girl and you'll be like, "Hey, we leaving." Like, hint. Like, if you want to be out or your girls are wilding out and they don't want to leave, come on now, because we don't have girls anymore. Like, we all come together, we all leave together, right? Or put a young girl in an Uber and be like, "Here's my number. Text me," you know what I mean? Let me know you got in the house, lock the door, that type of thing. You're right. We have to do a better job of community. And sadly, you know, I've had positive experiences with women in this business and bad experiences where women have said to me, you know, "Well, suck it up. That's just how it is." And you're like, "Excuse me?" You know, and I mean, I would say bad men don't get away with bad behavior without the assistance of some women who have been taught to believe that is what we have to do and endure as women in order to get into the corner office. And I'm like, no, we got to break that cycle too, how we're taught things, you know, and we got to definitely love on one another, and we got to be positive and not judge each other. You know, we like to do this thing because women dress a certain way, or they may be getting their money in a way that we don't think is appropriate, right? That we judge and therefore say you deserve for someone to disrespect you. We got to get out of that as well, you know, and be like, hey, come on, girl, I got you. You know, you need a meal, or
you need a slip.
Exactly. Or even better, you need refuge in my hotel room until we can figure something out. All of those things we have to get better on, because the horror stories, if we really were to break out some of these horror stories, you would be like, you are lying. And it's like, no. And if we don't look out for each other, it's only going to get worse. So I agree with Courtney 100%. Like, we got to kind of take a step back and be like, sis, are you good? Yeah. How can I help you?
And sometimes they don't want help. I've met a few city girls that are like, girl, leave me alone. I'm going with him.
Yeah, but you know what? Still drop that number and be like, when you're ready, I'm here for you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Listen, guys, we got about 3 minutes. Unfortunately, we can talk. We could go on forever, because this is it went a lot deeper than I thought it was, but a lot better than I thought this conversation would go. So, everybody, if you just take a minute just to give us a summary of the Black journalist and his and her mission when it comes to covering stories like Diddy and other stories involving prominent African Americans. Josh, we'll start with you. We'll go around the table to Kathia, and we'll let Courtney take us home.
Absolutely. 2 words that were mentioned on this conversation that we have to do as Black journalists when we're covering these stories is truth and accountability. Those are the 2 things that keep the most important word, and that's integrity. When we're covering truth and holding people accountable, there's a certain I can't think of the word right now. I'm losing my thoughts, but there's a certain respect that we get when we cover stories like this. You know, a lot of times for stories like this, people are looking to the Black press to see what we are going to say, and we have to handle ourselves and handle our stories in a way that not only is going to handle the truth correctly, but do it in a respectful way and responsible way, so that we don't lose our integrity.
Yeah, Kathia.
Listen, if you tell the truth, nobody can come for you. You know what I mean? If you lead with integrity and you lead with truth, and part of being a good Black person, in my opinion, or just a good Black journalist, period, is holding each other accountable, no matter how much charity someone may have done, no matter how much they've done for the culture. Because at the end of the day, if we don't hold each other accountable, how can we expect others that don't look like us to respect us and to treat us right?
Yeah. And Courtney Brown.
So what I will add was, one of my famous sayings is, there's nothing worse than a ninja with a problem and no solution. So I feel like as Black journalists, you know, even the way I write, it's the beginning, middle, and end. I feel like we should always include the truth. We should always include some heart-tugging story that will, in the end, offer a solution. How can we offer a solution? How can we help? How can one person change the next person's life in a positive way so that we can all continue this chain and make it more positive? I feel like we just have to stay true to ourselves and always remember that you don't know what people are going through. You don't know when they may need you. So always reach out, no matter how busy, tired, or, you know what I mean, how much you have on your lap. We have to help one another. We can reach out to other Black journalists as well, and we need to form a community between us.
100%.
Wow, this is absolutely incredible. Mike V says it's these stories as to why we subscribe to Let It Be Known. So we hope everybody else subscribes as well. But Josh and Courtney, have fun in Disney World. We were there the last couple of years. We won't be there this year, but Josh and Courtney will be there. Josh always represents. Josh is there every year. So have fun. Kathia, keep doing what you're doing. You guys are fantastic. I can't say enough how much we appreciate you, the Black Press of America. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks again. Everybody have a great weekend. Hopefully you guys will come back and we'll do this again.
Absolutely.
I would love to.
I would love to.
Y'all heard them. They all said yes. We'll see you next week on Let It Be Known. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.